Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. This is Project Black Savage. Before I say anything, I just want to thank you all for all of your really kind comments on the final painting video there, the painting fail that I released. Really made me feel better. Just everything all you guys said. You were all like really supportive, and I really appreciate that. Nobody really tore me apart on that one, so thank you guys. I really appreciate you. I couldn't ask for better fans. So anyway, let's get going with this one. This is actually, I'm gonna fix the radio in this particular video. Somebody, whoever had this before, tried to install aftermarket stuff. They cut the old harnesses and tried to wire in other speakers, and they didn't really realize what's going on with the speaker system in this car. You know, all the different speakers have different impedances. It's got an amplifier. It splits the signal to, bass speakers and then mids and highs, and they were just trying to wire in just a regular speaker that had, both a woofer and a tweeter in it, and none of that stuff works. So we're gonna fix we need to sort of resolder in all of the factory connectors. I've got old, I have upgraded speakers in my car. I bought the BAV Sound, I think, from the company BAV Sound. So I have my old Harman Kardon speakers up here, and so I'm gonna install those in this car. I only have one of the original speakers in this car. For some reason, they left the factory speaker on the driver's side, but they put upgraded speakers on the passenger and in the two rears. It's really weird. Anyway, let's just get started, and I'll take you through what I've done so far. So this is sort of the situation. This is the door card for the passenger side. Both the door cards are off. The driver's side one is off as well. This connector was actually fine. They actually they tied this speaker in to these wires up here, weird. So I took that off, and I used some liquid electrical tape. Ooh, looks like I need to use a little more. I kind of want to cover that up so that none of those wires are showing. So yeah, I'll put a little more liquid electrical tape on that, let that dry. But I have plugged this in to the connector here on the door, and both of these speakers do work, so that's all good. This speaker I'm going to replace with, like I said, a Harman Kardon. It's over here. That's that one. Now, before I actually plugged this in, I went ahead, or before I put it in the door card and everything, put it on, I went ahead and tried to plug, oops, that wire is trapped. I went ahead and plugged it in and tried to see if it was working, because they left this connector, because they teed in up here, and it's not working for some reason. For some reason, all the mids and the tweeters are working on the car, and the ones in the rear door, you've got one in the rear door over there. I don't know if you can see it, and then one over here. Those ones are working, but for some reason, I'm not getting like voltage signals on these two wires here or those two wires there. I cannot remember if I checked the rear ones. I did pull out the speakers in the back there. Probably don't have enough lighting to see that back there yet, but I will show you. I was checking voltages with my power probe just to kind of see if we were getting signal on those wires, and it's just 1 volt, one constant volt going to those wires. So I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, before I was able to do any of that, I had to get the little radio working. It was not working, and now it is. You can hear that there's sound and stuff. The reason it wasn't working, I just traced that back to actually a bad fuse. The radio uses fuse 7, which is a 5 amp fuse. Okay, so here we go. Here's some light on the situation. Fuse 1 starts up here, runs all the way across. I forget to what number, but I do know that 38 actually starts down here and then runs across to 71. So fuse number 7, which is this one right here, it's a 5 amp. That one was fine. That one's actually for the radio. And then fuse number 41 is this one right here. It's a 30 amp. This one was blown. So I changed that out, and now we have a working radio where we didn't before. So that's kind of where I am. That's how I've been able to confirm that we got sound, which you heard a second ago. So yeah, that's the driver's side door card. As you can see, the old factory speaker is actually still in the door there. And you can see over here, they cut off the connector but the connector was still in the speaker. So I can just go ahead and solder that back on. I did actually get another one from a junkyard a little while ago in anticipation of this, but apparently I don't need that. These connectors are fine. The connector for the tweeters, they did disconnect that, and so those wires are hanging right there, so I'll have to resolder on that connector. I do have it. Okay, so here's our rear speaker situation. Yeah, this is that new speaker they tried to install, which they cut the old factory harness here and wired it in. So I've removed it, and they actually screwed it in with drywall screws of all things. So that is now being deleted. So we'll toss that on the ground there. Now I have a new harness connector, which I got from the junkyard, so I'll wire that one in. And I've got one for this side as well. So we can get our speakers put back in and wired back in. So I'm going to do the wiring repairs first, and then we will figure out and we'll try to diagnose why we're not getting any sound going to these speakers, because it's really strange. I mean, if we're getting sound going to the tweeters, we should be getting sound going to the bass speakers. And that's all, because that all happens at the amplifier, which is in the trunk. I've already taken a look at the amplifier, and I can tell that nobody's been back there. Like, none of that wiring has been touched since it left the factory. I will show you in a little bit. So it's kind of a strange thing. I don't know what's going on with it, but we should be able to figure it out. So to repair this wiring, I'm going to use these new tools that those lovable folks at Milwaukee have sent me out. Right here we have their cordless soldering iron, and I've already actually used this thing to do some wiring repairs to my computer, and I will tell you right now, I love this thing. I love it a whole lot. It runs off the M12 battery, and it heats up in about 18 seconds, and it actually flashes a light on the back for those 18 seconds until it's actually warmed up. And after 18 flashes, it's warmed up, it's ready to go. It will melt solder. And the reason I particularly love this thing, the main reason I love it is because it's got this built-in stand right here. So you can just kind of set it down, and you don't have to fuss with, you know, some kind of a, you know, some other kind of stand, some kind of a little dinky metal stand that you get with, you know, other soldering irons, and just always seems to, you know, get knocked about, and then, you know, you touch your tip down on something and you burn something. This thing has its own built-in stand, which I just love to death. Now, you can actually turn it like this, and in this configuration, you know, it's got a nice balance, this tool. I mean, I really hate to you know, to go the feels good in the hand route, but it actually does feel good in the hand. And, you know, you can kind of use it like this, and it's just really nicely balanced about right here. You can just kind of, you can use it really, that you have a lot of dexterity with it. So I particularly like it, and yeah, you know, I'm really stoked that I have this tool. So we're going to see it in action in just a little bit. Now, they also sent me their M18 Heat Gun with the accessory kit. Now, the accessory kit has all these little metal cones that go in front of it, and just kind of, you know, it'll adapt it down to a smaller diameter, kind of concentrate the heat. This particular gun, it's got a little lockout thing right here. You push this down and turn it on. Now, it doesn't have two settings like your typical sort of Harbor Freight heat gun, but the thing I really love about this is that it's cordless. You know, if I wanted to use my heat gun in here, I have to dig out the cord, and, you know, I'd just be fumbling around with it and all the time, and, you know, I just for that particular reason, I really hate the heat gun that I have, although it is incredibly cheap compared to this one. I understand this is probably quite an expensive heat gun to own, but you know what? I'm really glad to have it, and it doesn't get that hot. I think it only gets, you know, it's the equivalent of like the first setting on like a regular heat gun that has a 2-setting feature. So it's only basically got, I guess, the low setting. So yeah, the trickiest part of this video is where to put you guys. Hopefully you're in a good spot here. Okay, so I've spent some time stripping quite a bit of the wire back. It was a little difficult because some of the ends were already kind of pre-twisted on there. So I'm going to slip on some heat shrink. I want to choose a big enough piece of heat shrink that I'll be able to get it over the wire once it's kind of soldered together. So I want to make sure that. I'm going to twist these ends up first. So we're going to take the wires and we're just going to sort of twist them around each other like this. And I know there's a name for that. I remember learning it somewhere, but I have now forgotten. So maybe somebody will give me a comment, but there's like, I think it's something, it's something referencing like the phone system or something like that. I think I saw it on AVE. I think he's the one who said whatever the name of this stitch was. So I've got these helping hands over here. I think they're made by Lyle. They're magnetic. See, like that, magnetic there and there, like that. And then it's magnetic here, so it'll just attach to the car. And then you can just kind of use those little jaws to hold the wire for you, which is super helpful. Okay, so now I got the Milwaukee here. I'm gonna flip it on. So you can see it's it flashed it flashed the battery lights when I first turned it on. So I've got three lights. I've already used this to do a repair previously, so I had it I forget how long I had it on, a couple minutes, 10 minutes or so. So we're just gonna wait for 18 seconds until this thing actually comes up to temperature. I'm gonna cut it out. Well, okay, we're already to temperature. So I can actually see that it's kind of smoking and steaming, just to kind of prove to you. There, see, it's melting the solder. So that thing gets really hot really fast. Pretty darn impressive. So I think in this situation, I'm gonna turn it like that, and I'll heat my wires. You want to heat your wires from underneath and touch the solder on the top. You want the wire to melt the solder so that the solder will actually run into the wire. Now these are really thick wires, so it might take a little while to actually heat them up enough. And usually, you know, your typical, I don't know, 40-watt soldering iron is actually probably not enough for wires this big. And this iron might, I'm not exactly sure, I don't remember how big it actually is. Oh, it's actually working. Yeah, that's great. Wow. I gotta tell you, my butane soldering iron, the Portasol that I have, is not big enough for this. I've tried to use it for wires like this before, and it just can't handle it. But wow, the Milwaukee's doing real nice. So I think we're done. So I'll go ahead and set this thing down. It's got that built-in stand. Here, let me get the excess solder off of it so it doesn't keep smoking. And now we'll go ahead and switch up the wire. Well, you know what? Let's do the heat shrink first. Make sure that heat shrink isn't too big, which I don't think it is. So let's see. You guys can see this? Yeah. So I'm gonna turn this on. I think that's about as much as it's going to shrink. You saw it shrunk it pretty soon. I think maybe perhaps I chose heat shrink that was slightly too big, but it's really not going to matter. I doubt it's going to matter. I wanted to make sure that I would slip it over that joint, but you know, it's fine. It's going to protect it. Just a speaker wire inside of a door here in Southern California. So just have to be patient with it. Let the soldering iron heat up the wire. There we go. You see it just kind of draws itself all into the wire, and you're nice and soldered. Let's go ahead and whack off the excess there. Turn off the iron, and it's gonna light up red while the tip is hot. So that's a nice little safety warning for you. So I'll go ahead. I'm gonna put that down on the ground. No need to keep it in the car. I think we're basically done there. That's it. Our wire is repaired here, so I'll go ahead and twist this back up. I want to find the original twist. And I'm going to cut off this Tessa tape, and I have other Tessa tape that I can just sort of rewrap this with. Actually, this might have enough sticky left on it. Here we go. We got the Tessa tape here. Probably unnecessary, but I want to make sure it just, what was there didn't unravel, you know? And I have this left over from before. So there we go. All repaired. Pretty nice. So final verdict. I really love this tool in particular. This one has impressed me so much because it's really powerful. It gets really, really hot. I will put the equivalent of how many watts this thing is in, I'll flash it up on the screen. But yeah, man, this is a really cool tool. I really actually like this so much better than the butane soldering iron that I have because it heats up faster and it definitely solders really thick wire. So really, really like it. And I particularly love having a cordless heat gun. That's really, really nice. Wish it did have a setting too, you know, so it got really, really hot and kind of melted things a lot faster. But hey, you know, it works for what it is, so I'm glad to have that too. So last thing I want to mention about this is that it does come with two tips. This is the big flat tip, and it comes with a smaller, pointier tip that's kind of more typical of a soldering iron. And these are the accessories that come with, you know, this is the accessory kit that you buy for the heat gun. So you've got this one that kind of concentrates the heat down to a little point. So you got that one. You got two sort of scoop looking ones. Not exactly sure what they're for. This gun is not just meant for automotive use. It's meant for other, you know, industries as well. So they probably have something to do with that. But, you know, this is the accessory that we would use in the automotive world. And this is that liquid electrical tape that I was talking about. It is what it is, you know, it is exactly what it says it is liquid electrical tape. Spread it on there and you can actually dry it a lot faster with the heat gun, which is what I just did. So love that stuff. So I've got the speakers all hooked up again. I've fixed all the wiring, got them all set up in the back. Everything's kind of reinstalled. But of course, the bass speakers still do not work. I guess they're mid-range speakers. So we got to figure out what's going on with that. Okay, so I thought we'd lay this down on the whiteboard just so I can kind of explain how things work. Now, you have your radio in your dash, and the radio is going to send out a front left and a front right signal, a rear right and a rear left signal. So that's like the full sound signal. It actually sends that back to the amplifier, which is in the trunk. And the amplifier is then going to split those signals into the various different speakers that we have on this car. It's a 10-speaker system. So what's going to happen is, let's say the front right, it's going to split that into the lows, mids, and highs. So the woofer, the mid, and the high. So that's front right, front right, front right right there. And so all of these speakers are actually in the door card, right? And it's going to take the rear right signal. It's going to split that into a woofer and a mid. And basically the mid is in the rear door card and the woofer is up behind where the window is. So the situation we have going on right now is we know our radio is working and we are hearing sound on the mids and the highs, front and rear. So we know from this, we know a lot of things. We know the radio is working and we know that there's power coming to the amplifier. There's signal coming out of the amplifier. It's just that the woofers are not working for some reason. So there are basically two possibilities at this point. Either our wiring is bad on all 4 of these woofers, or something is wrong with our amplifier and it is not sending the signal out on those wires at all. So of these two possibilities, we just repaired the wiring on all of the speaker connectors. I'm pretty confident that I fixed the wiring that I saw was cut. And I also, when I was testing the front 2 woofers, I was getting 1 volt, at least 1 volt on my power probe. I haven't used that power probe a lot, but when I was touching it to the wires, I was getting 1 volt. So that kind of tells me there's some voltage coming through that wire, if I can trust that. I probably should have grabbed the multimeter that I trust and I know, just to make sure and see what was going on there. But that being said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to assume that our wiring is good to our speakers, okay? And I'm going to go straight for the amplifier. I'm just going to expose it in the trunk. I'm going to dig it out from where it is, and I'm going to see if I can back probe on these connectors while the music is turned on and see if we can see voltage coming out. If we do, then we know the amplifier is good, and the problem has to be in our wiring. If we don't see any voltage coming out of the amplifier on the woofer circuits, we know the amplifier is bad. Okay, so I've got the carpet pulled back in the trunk here, and I've exposed the amplifier, which is kind of back there. That's the unit right there. That's the plug on top of it that we're going after. Now, one thing I want to point out is that you can tell nothing back here has ever been disturbed. I mean, this bundle of wire for the CD changer and all that stuff, it's where the factory would have put it originally. And then down here, you can see that there's, you know, if somebody had been back here and been messing with this connector and stuff, I would have expected this piece of whatever it is, tape or whatnot, to be removed and messed with, but I can just tell nobody's ever been back here, nobody's ever exposed this. So I'm not really expecting a wiring problem. I'm expecting more of an amplifier problem. So anyway, I'm just going to sort of disconnect all of this stuff and get it out of here and see if I can get the amp out so that we can expose this connector and see if I can back probe it and see if we got signal. Okay guys, I've got the amplifier dug out back here. I've got it unplugged right now. I actually have the radio on, so when I plug this back in, we're actually going to start to hear something. I've got a little pinout of the amplifier right here. Unfortunately, it doesn't have wire colors on here, but I kind of know what color the wires are for the speakers anyway. But basically, the pins in question that we're looking for are pins 1 through 4. That's going to be left rear and then left front. And then pins 22 through 25 are going to be the front right and the rear right. And you can kind of tell when you're looking at this which wires they are, because we can kind of recognize these wiring colors, you know, the brown and the yellow, and on this side the brown and the blue. Those were for the rear woofers that I fixed. And then over here we've got this blue with brown stripe, blue with red stripe, and then over here blue with white stripe, and then I think that's like a blue with brown stripe. Those are for the front speakers. So, you know, obviously those are these pins right here, these sort of fatter pins. This pin here and that one there, that's a power and a ground, which I've actually confirmed. Let's see, we can go ahead and, so let me touch this pin and that pin. You see we've got 12 volt power. So our powers and grounds are good to the amplifier, obviously, of course, because the thing's working. So let me go ahead and plug this in. So I think maybe you can hear slightly that we've got some sound coming out. So I'm going to stick my back probe in some of these wires right here. We'll just choose like the rear subwoofers. So you see I've just got my back probes in on the yellow and the brown right there. And you can see we've got no voltage at all. And I've gone ahead and I've tested all 4 of the woofer pairs of wires, and we've got 0 volts on all of them. So that basically confirms that our amplifier is dead. It does not send output to the woofers at all. So I think that is a 100% confirmed diagnosis. The amplifier is bad. We need to get a new one. Should cost me around 25 bucks in a junkyard. I think I know where one is. So I'm gonna go tomorrow, see if I can find it. You know, I think we can justify spending 25 bucks more on this car just to get the sound back, because we should at least have a working radio, you know what I'm saying? Especially since one of you guys sent me that radio for this car. I want to make sure that that thing's working and it's good. Anyway, I really like those Milwaukee tools. They're actually really cool, especially that soldering iron. I think that thing is really, really cool. And I do like the heat gun as well. I'm actually going to use it. I'm going to fix the light on this car too, so I'm going to use it, and you know, it should be fine for actually doing that. I got to take the the bezel back off and fix that thing again. Anyway, long story. Anyway, you know, if you guys enjoyed this video, if you liked what you saw, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. I am the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.